Study Session 6 Perceived Fairness in Groups. Introduction. This study session highlights the perception of fairness in group, the nature and the effects, the categories of justice, and how we react to feelings of unfairness. The terms fairness and justice are used synonymously in the literature of this study session. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Explain the importance of perceived fairness in groups. 2. Categorize conceptualizations of justice. 3. Consider how we react to feelings of perceived unfairness. And 4. Discuss the consequences of justice. Substance of justice. That is unfair. What a rip-off. We deserve better. Such comments typify comments bred by perceived injustice. Justice is pervasive but invisible until an injustice has occurred. When the term justice is used, it generally refers to an individual's perceptions, one's evaluations as to the appropriateness of a given outcome or process. It is inherently subjective. But what is justice? According to some socio-psychological theorists, people perceive justice as equity, the distribution of rewards in proportion to individuals' contributions. If you and I have a relationship, such as employer-employee, teacher-student, husband-wife, colleague-colleague, according to Meyers 1993, it is equitable if my outcomes equals your outcome and my input equals your input. If you contribute more and benefit less than I do, you will feel exploited and irritated. I may feel exploitative and guilty. Chances are that you will be more sensitive to the inequity. Greenberg, 1986. Conceptualizations of justice. The study of organizational justice has focused on two major issues: employers' response to the things they receive, that is, outcomes, and the means by which they obtain these outcomes. Distributive justice. Distributive justice theories focus on the contents or outcomes of a decision, that is, the fairness of the outcomes, e.g., outcomes of performance appraisal, selection, peer review, promotion, etc. Procedural justice. This is concerned with the fairness of the process by which a decision is made. Procedures are fair if they are made consistent, to suppress bias, based on accurate information, are correctable, representative, and following ethical standards. Why does procedural justice matter? Two theories have been put forward to explain the effect of procedural justice. The first is the self-interest model, or instrumental or control model. The self-interest model suggests that people seek control over processes because they are concerned with their own outcomes. This view assumes that giving people the opportunity to have some voice in the procedures to make decisions will lead to a fairer outcome in the eyes of the beholder. And the second is relational or group value model. This underlying premise of the group value model is that voice over procedures satisfies a desire to have one's views considered, and not because it's believed that it will have an effect on the outcome, but because it communicates to people that they are being treated in a dignified and respected way, thereby enhancing their feeling of self-worth. Interactional justice, or social aspect of justice. Byers and Moag, 1986. This perspective argues that people are sensitive to the quality of interpersonal treatment they receive during the enactment of organizational procedures. Attributes of interactional justice include truthfulness, respect, propriety of questions, and justification. Relationship between procedural and distributive justice. Procedural and distributive justice appear to have different consequences. Procedural justice is linked to system satisfaction, whereas distributive justice is linked to outcome satisfaction, according to two-factor model by Freixel and Gordon, 1989. Procedural justice was a better predictor of employees' satisfaction with the grievance system than distributive justice. Byrne and Cropanzano, 2000, investigate the outcomes of procedural and interactional justice. Based on their empirical findings, they argued that organizational formal procedural justice and interactional justice predict attitudes and behaviors directed at the organization, in brackets, organizational citizenship behavior directed at the organization and organizational commitment, close brackets. Whereas supervisory formal procedural justice and interactional justice best predict organizational citizenship behavior directed at others and commitment to the supervisor. Thus, the evidence suggests that distributive justice affects outcome satisfaction, in bracket, how satisfied you are with the outcome of any decision, pay, selection, promotion, training, etc. Procedural justice affects attitudes and behavior towards the broader organization, that is, organizational commitment and organizational citizenship behavior. Interactional justice affects attitudes and behaviors towards an individual boss. The components of justice interact with other people to produce the effect. As long as the outcomes associated with the decision are more positive or not so negative, then the impact of procedural justice on individuals' reactions is relatively small. The ends justify the means. As long as the procedures used to make or implement the decision are fair or just, then the impact of outcome negativity on individuals' reactions will be relatively small. The means justify the ends. The most negative reaction will occur when individuals believe that the outcomes are relatively negative and the procedural fairness is low. Reactions to judgment of fairness. There are three possibilities of how people that are exploited react. Exploited people can accept and justify their inferior position. They can demand compensation, perhaps by harassing, embarrassing, or even cheating their exploiter. If all else fails, they may try to restore equity by retaliating, perhaps vindictively. An interesting implication of equity theory is that the more competent and worthy people feel, that is, the more they value their input, the more likely they feel that a given outcome is sufficient, and thus retaliate intense social protest comes from those who believe themselves worthy of more than they are receiving. Myers, 1993. Consequences of justice. Contextual performance. Organizational citizenship behavior, OCB, Byrne and Cropanzano, 2000. Organ, 1988. Define OCB as behavior that is discretionary, not directly or explicitly recognized by the formal reward system, and that in aggregate promotes the effective functioning of the organization. The behavior is not an enforcement requirement of the role or the job description. The behavior is a matter of personal choice. Organ, 1988, page 4. Conscientiousness. This is punctuality in attendance, use of work time, and adherence to rules. Altruism. This is helping others who are absent or behind in their work. Any voluntary action that helps another person out at work. Sportsmanship. This involves putting up with minor inconveniences or not always finding fault with the organization. Courtesy. This is consulting people who may be affected by a decision or at the very least informing other people in advance of such action. Civic virtue. This is keeping up with development happenings in the organization, constructive involvement in the political process of the organization. Counter performance. Organizational retaliatory behavior, ORB, according to Skaliki and Fogger, 1997. Examine the interaction between the different components of justice in predicting employees' retaliation in organization. 1. The relationship between unfair outcomes and retaliation is only significant when people perceive there is low procedural and interactional justice. And 2, high levels of interactional justice make employees more tolerant of unfair procedures and unfair outcomes. Different facets of justice interact with each other. The effect of justice on OCB and ORB can be explained by social exchange theory and the norm of reciprocity. Study session summary. In this study session, you learned that organizational justice has the following: distributive, procedural, and interactional, that has an effect on individual contextual performance or counter performance. Distributive justice. Individuals' judgment about whether they are receiving their fair share of available reward. Share should be proportionate to contribution. Procedural justice. Judgment concerning the fairness of the procedures used to distribute available reward among group members. Consistency of procedures. Accuracy. Opportunity for correction. Bias suppression. Ethicality. Transactional justice. Extent to which persons who distribute rewards explain or justify their decisions and show considerateness and courtesy to those who receive the rewards. Individuals are concerned about the fairness of the outcomes they receive, as well as the procedures adopted to reach an outcome decision. End of study session 6. Thank you for listening.